Well, let's look at the latest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. Joe Biden holds an 8-point lead nationally over President Trump, 51 to 43%. The former vice president holds an 85-point lead among black voters, a 29-point lead among voters under the age of 34. He's up by 20 points among women, by 13 among white college-educated voters, by 6 among independents, and by 4 among seniors. Trump holds a 9-point average with white voters, a 5-point advantage among men, and a 23-point advantage among white voters without a college degree. In 12 key battleground states, Biden is up by 6, 51 to 45%. Among Latino voters, Biden holds a commanding 36-point lead, 62% to 26%. When looking at the key issues facing our nation, voters trust Biden more to handle the coronavirus and race relations. Biden and Trump are statistically tied on who is better to handle crime and violence, and voters side with President Trump to handle the economy.
Well, Jonathan Lemire, you've been saying for weeks that Donald Trump wants anything to be talked about other than the coronavirus. And you're right. I mean, not just because 200,000 people are dead and he's responsible for a large number of those deaths. Historians will say it. Get mad if you want. It's the truth. Because he doesn't want to talk about coronavirus, because look at those numbers. Who can handle coronavirus better? 51% say Joe Biden, 29% say Donald Trump. It's almost as if Americans don't believe his lies anymore.
Joe, they've been paying attention, and I think that this has been the truth since March, when the pandemic really began here, that American people, after giving him the benefit of the doubt for those first few weeks, and there was a brief bump in his approval ratings, have largely and vociferously disapproved of how he has handled the pandemic. So as you say, he has been trying to desperately change the subject. And twice now, they've leaned hard into law and order. After the death of George Floyd, which culminated, of course, in the president clearing Lafayette Square on June 1st so he could stage a photo op with a Bible in front of a church. And now again, the last few weeks after Kenosha. And both times they thought that this play would be reassuring to frightened seniors or suburban voters that the president was cracking down on chaos in the streets, in their words. And it has not had much of an effect at all. We saw that certainly his numbers continued to sink after George Floyd's death and his mishandling of the mass, largely peaceful protests that followed that. And then in these last few weeks, though the Trump campaign says their internals suggest slight changes in certain states, largely there's been no real movement here either, particularly in the state of Wisconsin, where Kenosha, of course, is located, that they have long thought was of the three Great Lakes states. They need to get one of them. They thought Wisconsin was their best chance. And now they are seeing that they're growing more pessimistic about that. And Joe, as a final point, we've been sort of cycling through which states really seem to matter the most in this race. Wisconsin has sort of been at the top for a while. Arizona has, in the last few weeks, has emerged as one because the Republicans are so nervous about Arizona, and they feel that if they lose it, that changes their map considerably. Well, if they lose Arizona, keeping Wisconsin, no sure thing, isn't enough to get to 270. The state that the president's team are focused on now, Pennsylvania. He goes there twice this week. It is the biggest prize of the three in the middle, the Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania trio. His poll numbers have been the closest there, but he is still down. And as we've discussed, that's a tough climb for this president, since Pennsylvania, of course, is Joe Biden's native state, where he has such roots, and you'd assume such good turnout in the Scranton area, where they're focusing so heavily on turning out the cities of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and the Philadelphia suburbs seem to be breaking hard away from the president. So for the Trump's team, it's about turning out rural, exurban voters to try to overcome that. Polls say it's close, but that's going to be very tough for him to do. But that's where he's going to be spending his energy this week and perhaps beyond.
Well, he has to. I mean, and Jonathan Lemire, thank you so much. He has to, because he's got to win Pennsylvania. And with Wisconsin slipping out of reach right now, again, not so early, but those numbers have been pretty steady over the past several weeks, 5, 6, 7, 8 points Wisconsin actually has been one of his more favorable swing states of the 6 or 7 swing states that everybody's been looking at this past year. You look at what's happening in Wisconsin, and here you have actually a 9-point lead for Joe Biden in Wisconsin. You look at Michigan polls, and for 6 months now, the Trump team have realized that Michigan was the least likely of the swing states that they could win. Suddenly, all eyes go to Pennsylvania. And if he doesn't win Pennsylvania, he's sunk. But, Rev, you look at the poll numbers, and it seems, I think it was the New York Times yesterday that wrote this story, either the Times or the Wall Street Journal. But the lead was fascinating because they talked about how volatile 2020 was. And it was the most volatile year in recent American history because of the pandemic, because of the economic crisis, because of the protests, 25 million people marching in the streets. Yes, disturbances, some riots, some looting, and just political chaos. And yet the one constant this year, Joe Biden's 8-point lead. Isn't it fascinating that there has been such a consistency over the past 6, 7, 8 months in these polls, and still with the crises that we're enduring, the shocks that we're enduring, those numbers still holding steady in this latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll?
When you look at the fact that in unstable times, as outlined in that article, people look for leadership to be a stabilizing force. People that are in waves that are going up and down on the ocean, they want stability. They want to hold on to something. And this president has not only not been stable, he's been one that has incited the waves and embellished the waves that we keep going up and down on in the things that were outlined in the article that you recounted. And I think Joe Biden has shown a steady hand. If you just look at Wisconsin, contrast the visit by Donald Trump that went in inciting things, meeting with law enforcement, not dealing with the family of the victim there in Kenosha, not showing a balance, and look at how Biden came in. Whether one is on one side or the other of the argument, people want stability and someone that could bring a sense of calmness so we can reflect and move forward. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of 2 of saintly people that died this year, John Lewis and Ginsburg. And the reaction from this president is not just to let's mourn 2 or 3 days, is I'm going to replace her right away. Let's keep the turbulence going. And I think that is why you see this steady in the poll for Joe Biden. We want people that will steady us during rocky times.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.